Everyone, Dan, right? Talking about the top five running backs heading into 2021 NFL Draft with Jordan Hornbeak and Jesse Madden. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me again, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Nathan.
Anytime. So, Jesse, do you want to give your number one first?
Yeah, I'll give my number one. So, as number one in the best running back in this NFL draft, I believe Nakji Harris is my number one. And I believe that because his size combined with his speed and his production this past season, playing an all SEC schedule. I mean, he's just your picture perfect prospect, especially with how much he reminds me of Derrick Henry and how well Derrick Henry has been the past couple seasons in the NFL. And I totally think Najee Harris can transfer his game to the NFL just like Derrick Henry did.
I agree with you. I have Najee Harris at number one. Yeah, probably the best running back in college football. Like you said, playing all SEC schedule. And he was a Heisman candidate for a little. And he had offense where he also had Smith and Jones. But yeah, I agree with that. And in Alabama, they're always producing great running backs.
Yeah, Najee was definitely hands down my number one as well. Like Jesse said, his size, his I really like his big playability. Whether it's catching the ball or running it. He's always a guy to watch for to get 30 or 40 yards. And yeah, he's a very promising prospect. And like you said, the history at Bama and all that combined definitely makes him my top guy.
Yeah, so for my number two, I went from Alabama to Clemson, the new rivalry that's kind of brewing. And I did that because Travis Etienne is my number two running back. And I think he's my number two because he has a great burst of speed and the production similar to Najee. But I think Travis Etienne was a 3-year starter and he's played in a lot of big games, and his ability to catch in the screen game, which is becoming more and more popular in the NFL these days. I feel like he can definitely transition seamlessly into any NFL system.
I have Travis Etienne at number two also. With him, he was a game changer for Clemson. Like you looked at that one game a few years ago when Kelly Bryant, I believe he was the starter, and they went and he got hurt against Alabama. You looked at Clemson's offense, and they couldn't do much. And also having the all-time ACC rushing yards. So I have him at number two.
Yeah, my number two was a little. I was pretty iffy about mine, but I give it to Travis Etienne as well. Like you said, great burst of speed. He's dangerous when he gets in the open field, and it's going to be a little bit harder in the NFL to get in the open field. But I mean, if he does, you better watch out for him. And he runs tough along with that speed. So
We all have the same list so far.
So I think my number three is going to change it up a little bit.
Me too.
So my number three is actually Trey Sermon out of Ohio State. And that's because what he was able to do in the big games that they had this season. And I believe he started at Oklahoma and then transferred to Ohio State this year. And similar to Najee, he's built. I mean, he's over 6 foot, and I'm pretty sure he's above 220 pounds, and he can run. And I just like how exciting of a player he is and how much of a big play threat he is. And I think he's super fun to watch, and hopefully he can translate to the NFL as he has in college football.
But my number three, I don't think anyone else will have him at number three, but I had Demetric Felton because I just like his electricness on the field, his explosiveness. He started out as a wide receiver, converted to a running back, and he can do it. And he can be a receiving back for you. He can do the kickoff returns, like that game against Washington State a few years ago where they made the crazy comeback. He got a kickoff return touchdown. He can do it in the running game. And he reminds me of like Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey. And I think that for today's NFL with running backs, I think he fits in well.
My number three was Trey Sermon as well. Dude runs tough. He's a tough runner. And in today's NFL, there's always a roster spot for a dude who runs tough. My only question with him was kind of his speed in the open field. He's not the fastest dude, but I mean, you talk about when coaches talk about leaving yards on the field. That's one dude who doesn't do that, and that's something a lot of coaches will do over in their depth chart. So.
Yeah, I agree with that one. And so for my number 4, I went with Javonte Williams from North Carolina. And I did that because I think there are 2 running backs from North Carolina that are going into this draft. And I like him because I think he's the tougher runner of the 2. And he played in some big games. You know, he had a good game against Miami and a great game against Notre Dame, even though they lost. But I think he's a good player. And I like his size. You know, he's not too big, but he's not small. I think he's about 6'1" and over 220 pounds. And I think he'll be able to make some plays in the NFL.
My number 4, I have Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State. I liked his play style playing in the Big 12. You know, he's probably the best offensive player for Oklahoma State, or Tylan Wallace, but I think it's probably him. He's one of the top running backs. I think he can translate well in the NFL.
For my number 4 is Chuba Hubbard as well. You know, the dude, he runs hard as well. You know, he has big playability. You know, probably not like the best in the draft, but his is definitely there. Good. He was great. I think he was great inside the 20. You know, he would lower his shoulder and get as many yards as he could. So that's another dude where he don't leave yards on the field.
So for my number 5, I went with Demetric Felton. So I wasn't really a fan of him. And then I started talking to Nathan, and Nathan was sending me all his highlights. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this guy can really make it in the NFL. And I think that he'll make it more on the line of being a kick returner and a situational running back, catching screens and running routes out of the backfield, maybe even in the slot. Definitely returning punts as well. And I'm not sure like if his NFL rushing numbers will be that great, but I know he's going to be able to be an impact player once he makes it.
So for my number 5, I have Jarrett Patterson from Buffalo. I liked watching his film and everything, seeing how he can find the open hole, and he can also go off for an explosive play. And he's leading Buffalo is the all-time leading. He has the most touchdowns in Buffalo history. I just like Jarrett Patterson at my number 5.
My number 5 is Michael Carter from North Carolina. I mean, personally, like, if y'all think about this list, I just like tough running backs. You know, the thicker guys, dudes who lower their shoulder a lot. So that's why my list is a lot more picky towards that. I mean, nothing against like Demetric Felton or Christian McCaffrey or dudes like that, but I'm just not a gimmick running back guy. But yeah, my number 5 is Michael Carter. Dude's thick. He's built like a bowling ball. And he's a tough runner, probably the toughest runner in the draft, aside from Trey Sermon. But yeah, dude runs tough. And I mean, in a short yardage situation or goal line, you look at teams like the Chiefs or Broncos or the Chargers who need, you know, more of a power back in their depth chart. He's a guy who who'll be available in the later rounds, but he'll definitely help you out.
So that's why you didn't have Demetric Felton on there.
Yeah, that's why.
But I actually understand that because, like you said, the Chiefs, like they drafted Edwards-Helaire in the first round, but they don't really use him in the goal line. They try and run it with Mahomes more, and that's just not a recipe for success in the NFL.
Yeah. Clyde's a great player though. He had a good rookie year, but I mean, towards the end, he really got taken out of the game plans a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't he hurt for a little bit too?
Yeah,
but I think he did get banged up. Yeah.
Yeah, once he came back though, like in the playoffs, I don't think he played over 25 snaps.
I don't even think they ran the ball more than 25 times.
Yeah, you're right.
Isn't he like 5'8"?
Yeah, he's not a big guy.
All right, thank you for joining me today.
No, of course. Thank you for having me.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, thank you for having me as well.
Anytime.